Hello and welcome to Small Business Snippets, the podcast from smallbusiness.co.uk. I'm your host, Anna Jordan. We're looking at small business milestones, those real defining moments for an entrepreneur. Think landing your first client, launch day, and even your first major setback. In a slight change of plan, today we have Michael Rossman, co-founder of EnergyBillKill, a business energy switching and comparison service. He'll be talking about securing his first round of seed funding. Hello, Michael.
Hi, thank you for having me.
How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Okay, let's crack on. Tell me a bit about how the name for your company came about.
Fundamentally, it's incredibly boring to switch energy, and it's administrative, and most small business owners will identify with this. Nobody really wants to do it. So the question for us was very simple, which is, A, how do you get the message out about what you're doing? So EnergyBillKill, it's exactly what we're doing. We're killing the energy bills, metaphorically speaking. Yeah. And the second was, how do we make it a little bit entertaining so that folks can sort of laugh about it?
I must say, I almost typed in energy kill bill a few times.
And frankly, the fact that you made mistakes, it's great, because that was the intention. Because people reference, obviously, 90s cult movies, etc. Yeah. And, we thought that would be a fun way of introducing something that's terribly boring into the marketplace.
I noticed you've got a sort of ninja theme going on your site as well.
Some people see ninjas, others see samurais, and it's absolutely wonderful. And that's precisely the idea. The idea is that the ninjas and samurais, they have a code of ethics and how they do things, and they do a lot of good things historically, and there are all these stories about them. And this is the same idea. We believe we're doing really good things for small businesses, and this is a bit playful in a sense.
Coming back round to your seed funding, Tell me what it was like when you secured that first round.
It was absolutely exciting and wonderful. It's a very tough job to secure a seed round of funding, and the fundamental challenge is that people are investing in you. Sure. Almost always. So there are outstanding cases of repeat entrepreneurs who very quickly secure funding because they've just sold the business, right? They've just built a business and they're going to do something else, and their existing shareholders who've just made lots of money with them will reinvest with them. In our case, this is seed funding for a new business, for a new idea, and we were not repeat entrepreneurs. So going around and speaking with people and talking about our idea, talking about ourselves, that's very time consuming and takes a lot of effort. Yeah. But at the end of it, you hopefully find the right people to get you going. And we found those folks, and that happened a year and a half ago. And since then, we've had some more folks who came in to support us. So it's been a wonderful journey.
So for people who don't know very well, talk us through how the process works.
Well, I think, first of all, you have to clearly articulate your vision, where it is that you want to go, and why it is that this idea is particularly attractive. Ideally, you go to your friends and family first, or people who know you really well. Yeah. The reason for that is that at that early stage, the investment is into you as an individual. So because your idea is unproven, it hasn't started. So folks have to bet that no matter what, you will go through and you have the skill sets or the drive and the energy and the ability to go through the ups and downs, because everything is going to go wrong by definition. And as Mike Tyson says, he always has plans until he gets punched in the face on the ring, right? So and it's exactly with startups. Everybody has a plan, and then the first day you start doing it, it's all goes wrong. To be precise, people who've invested in us did know us. I would certainly call them friends. They did know some of our track record from our professional lives. The people who will take the risk on you initially have to have had some exposure to you in some capacity, whether it's because you're their third cousin from Australia, whether it's because they've been on a deal with you if they're in banking, whether it's because they played in a band with you or they were your classmate in high school. Whatever it may be, there has got to be somewhere where they would have observed you over several years, nothing to do with your business, just you as an individual, and where they can reference that journey that you have had to that point. That's really important, and it's inescapable. That's just the case.
You talk about the length of time it takes to go around and find people. What kind of other challenges do you face?
Well, I think one, you need to be incredibly clear that as a startup, you can attack the particular idea. Mm-hmm. So there are lots of things we all want to change in the world of commerce. But, for example, I would like to fly from New York or London to New York in 1 hour. So as a startup, I can go for that objective. But fundamentally, am I really going to be able to challenge Airbus, right? Who is doing those things? Billionaires, Bezos, etc., right? So you have to have an idea that you can do as a startup because of your skills, of your background, your professional understanding of the market, and the market has to be relatively open and accessible really quickly. Business energy, for example, where we're bringing prices down, it's a market that we can easily enter, and it's a market where we can innovate and we can bring tremendous value up front to customers with our technology. And we were able to do it really quickly.
How did you research and prepare for these meetings?
So I come from the world of finance and banking, and in the world of finance and banking, you really do a lot of research and you prepare lots of presentations and decks. So the initial approach that we had was to do that, ad infinitum research, make sure you have answers to every single question, etc., and have presentations that go into depth on every possible topic you can think of. And counterintuitively, specifically in startup world and technology world, that's actually the wrong approach in my view. The right approach is you write down on one piece of paper what it is that you're trying to achieve with your startup, and on another piece of paper you write a couple of criteria of why this market is attractive and why it's going to be open for a startup. And then the third piece of paper, you write down all the qualities about yourself that makes you the right person to take paper 1 and paper 2 and make it into a startup. And that's actually quite difficult because the ultimate beauty is when you've eliminated all the complexity. And we always, there are folks who really can be very complex about stuff, and that's fantastic. And then there are folks who can be really simplistic about it. And that's also fantastic. But it's the golden mean between that, the complexity and simplicity, where the fundraising has to land. Because you do have to know what you're talking about, but you have to do it really quickly, and you have to do it in a few pages, basically.
What's the secret formula to finding that balance?
Actually, I use the 30-second rule, or 1-minute rule. So if someone asks you to write out in several pages what you're talking about, that means they haven't got your idea. So either your idea someone can grasp in a few minutes, and then you go sort of into other conversations, or you get stuck on explaining your idea. If you constantly get stuck on explaining and folks are just not getting it, you may have a great idea. It just needs to be somehow shaped so that, the person says, I get it. Now let's talk about you, or let's talk about how you're going to do it. So you always want to move away from the actual idea, bizarrely, into other topics rather than spend time on the idea, if that makes sense.
So other topics surrounding the idea.
How you're going to make it, your background, etc.
Okay. And you talked a bit about the qualities of an entrepreneur, and obviously they come in all sorts of different forms. So what would you say are the characteristics that investors are looking for?
One of the best description of entrepreneurs I've ever heard of is it's like jumping off a big cliff and assembling an airplane on the way down and going at an accelerated speed. And I think that's probably the right description, in a sense that, for better or worse, we're all trained in specific, or professionally or at school, at universities, we all concentrate in something. We become lawyers, accountants, bankers, engineers, media guys, marketing people. And when you're going to do a startup, you're everything. And that ability of cross-domain thinking, or to put it differently, when both sides of your brain are engaged, that's the most difficult part, because for most of us, the other side of the brain goes to sleep. Whatever it is, we could be very creative, then our mathematical side of the brain is sleeping. We can be mathematical, and then our creative side is very sleepy. And putting those together, that's why you see these super successful guys whom I admire, all the successful entrepreneurs you hear about them. That's why they go play classical music and rock and etc., because they're actually super engaged. The entire brain functions across multiple levels. and on the practical level in terms of doing things. And that's a very difficult thing to do. It's very time-consuming and laborious.
Yeah, imagine. So it's beneficial, say you're quite a logical, mathematical person, to then go away and say learn an instrument or take time for creative writing or something like that to make you more well-rounded.
Oh, I see. I'm not sure you can actually learn to be an entrepreneur. I think one has to just look at oneself and say, am I the type of person that if I'm suddenly facing a question completely outside of my knowledge, completely outside of anything I've ever done, am I the type of person who is going to explore that and find this interesting, the exploration, and finding the answer, or dealing with an unexpected question like that, or am I not? And if one is not that type of the person, it's much more difficult in the startup environment, because a lot of folks just want to do what they know what to do, which is absolutely the great thing to do, right?
Coming back to the funding itself, how did the funding that you secured feed into your business goals?
The first thing is it enabled failure, which is great. So, I mean, on a more serious note, what it enabled us to do is to build a prototype of our specific idea. And the prototype, and again, this is where you have to be a bit creative, right? Because you have limited funding. You need to demonstrate something, that what it is where you want to go, because then you need to raise more money so that you can then build a proper commercial application. And in our case, that was it, which is basically how do we find the quickest, cheapest way for demonstration of what it is we're trying to do, which also demonstrates our capability to execute, right? Because so the once you get the investors to take the risk on you, the first measure is going to be, are you delivering on whatever it is you promised to deliver, right? So you always need, in my mind, you have to make a commitment to your investors in whatever round, whether it's seed round or venture capitalists. You have to say, my aspiration at the end of the next 6 months is to be here. And then you're measured against that, right? So our aspiration for the initial investment was to build a prototype which demonstrates that our idea works in principle, and that we have the ability to execute that idea. And we achieved that. And then we raised, more money, and the objective there was to have a commercial product and a service. And there we achieved as well. So we've launched commercial products and services, right? So that's the sort of milestones that one has to work towards once you get the investors on board.
And as far as entrepreneurs who want to go into that first round of seed funding, what kind of advice do you have for them, particularly in terms of saving time and finding the right person?
It depends who is doing it. So if you're at universities have fantastic programs now for startups. And they have accelerators and they have ways of connecting people. So networking is absolutely key. And whatever that network happens to be, I'd strongly encourage folks to insert themselves into those networks. So if you want to be in media, for example, I think Channel 4, BBC, ITV, and various other folks, they have, startup camps and I think, and et cetera. If you are in technology, you have lots of accelerators here in the City of London. All the universities have programs now, I think, and most of them do. So I think that's one route. If you come from an industry and you're experienced already, and let's say you've invented a better gadget, the first port of call has got to be your contacts in that industry who have known you and who understand the issue at hand. Because if it's a technical solution, then they do need to have an understanding to back it a little bit. If if you're improving something in particular. If it's completely green and you're just literally sitting one day in a cafe and think, oh, wouldn't it be nice to do X, Y, and Z? I think the first port of call is family and friends. Call up family and friends and say, hey guys, I've come up with this idea. Don't know where it's going. I need to put it together a little bit so then I can go to raise more money to actually get it done properly. So I think, those are the sources. And obviously, of course, there are lots of folks who come from wealth. So if you do come from wealth, investors absolutely love when you put lots of your own money initially to demonstrate something. But for most people, that is not a viable option.
Great. Well, thanks ever so much for coming in, Michael.
Listen, fantastic. We really appreciate it.
You can find out more about EnergyBillKill at EnergyBillKill.com. You can also visit smallbusiness.co.uk for more guidance on different funding options for your business. Join us next time when we'll be speaking to a Syrian entrepreneur about how she went from arriving in the UK without a word of English to running her own company. Until then, thank you for listening.